Fake news today on Dottotech. Steve Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? At Dottotech, we make technology easy so you can do more. Now, normally at this moment in our videos, I try and inject a little bit of humor, but I'm not going to do that today because this topic is so darned important. It's a major issue in our society right now, dealing with fake news, and I just don't want to inject any levity where it's not really appropriate. I tell you what is appropriate, though, is you subscribing to our channel. Please subscribe, and when you do so, make sure you hit the notification bell so you'll be alerted to when we upload new videos. Now, let's take on this topic of fake news, and it's a sensitive topic for me to take on, or for anybody to take on, because it's so charged with a political bias. So let's make an arrangement right now, you and I. We're not going to make this about politics. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you sit on, you have to be concerned with fake news, regardless of where you sit, so we'll agree to that. So we won't make this about politics. In fact, the example that I'll give and that I'll use is very far from politics. It'll be a commercial fake news story that we kind of base everything around. So let's agree to that right now. And please, when you comment below in the comments, let's keep that on a positive and productive level and not allow that to degenerate into finger pointing in politics. We know that both political sides play dirty tricks and have fake news, and so let's accept that and let's figure out how we can call them out on it and make sure that we can avoid being sucked in or becoming part of the problem, and instead, let's all work at becoming part of the solution by educating ourselves. So let's take a look at the anatomy of a fake news post. We're going to be specifically dealing with Facebook here. Facebook is really one of the worst areas for fake news, and there's a variety of different reasons that makes it such fertile soil for fake news. And you and I are the biggest reason that Facebook is such fertile soil for fake news. Why is that? Because we have personal biases. We have stories that we have, and Facebook's been able to identify our personal biases. So now in the news feed, Facebook will send us information or posts, make sure that we get ones, which invoke a reaction from us. And so if you see a particularly salacious post in the Facebook feed that you rise to immediately, you're being manipulated to a certain extent. They already know what you are predisposed to react to, and they're going to make sure you see more of that in your feed because they want to create that reaction. They still want to create the click. Remember, at the end of the day, Facebook is they'll shout to the stars that they're trying to become part of the solution on this. They're trying to make money, and they will continue to try and make money wherever they can. That's their number one thing. Their number one thing is not keeping the news pure. No, their number one thing is making money. So they're always going to be leaning more towards that side. It's just the fact. And all of the rest of the social platforms have the same issue. It's up to us to kind of raise the level of conversation and raise the level of awareness. So at any rate, let's go back. So now we see a post come through. Now here's an example. I live in Canada, and Kevin O'Leary is a pretty big deal in Canada. We all know who he is. He's a bigger-than-life celebrity. He's dipped his toe into political leadership. He's very opinionated. He's rather acerbic. I'm interested in what happens in his life. I find him entertaining and educational and thought-provoking occasionally and scary occasionally. So here we see Kevin O'Leary is being sued, apparently, and he is being served his just desserts because of some insider trading. That's what the nature of this thing is. Now, if I go into this story, look at this. In the actual story itself, if I've clicked into it, if I've been attracted to click into it, and I haven't done I should never click into the story, to be honest with you. We'll tell you why in a few moments. But now that I have clicked in, it's a story that obviously I'm interested in. It's wrapped in the wrapping of CBC News, our national news service. And so this looks as legit as it can be. This is pretty much exactly what I would see if I go to CBC's own site, except for a few major and a few minor differences. The major differences are we will only see if we happen to click on any links in here, which will take us to a commercial site. That's where this company is trying to, these people are trying to get us to sign up for an online gambling site. It's actually quite an ingenious little bit of fake news here, or clickbait. But as I read through the story, it looks like a totally legitimate story until we reach about this point here in the narrative where they start talking about a totally, what they say is a totally legit online gambling service, the only one in Canada, the one that Kevin O'Leary didn't invest in because he's going to go to jail. It's called Cash Cabin. And in fact, these guys are so awesome that they are skewing and tilting the scales in favor of the people that are gambling. And in order to get, kind of into the marketplace, they're giving away huge prizes. So now is the time to gamble. It's quite a nice piece of manipulation if you think about it, even if it wasn't so darn immoral to do it this way. So this is an obvious piece of fake news. Now, anytime I click on any of these links here, it's going to take me to their site and try and get me to log in. So let's figure out now kind of what the hallmarks were, the things that we could have seen and do as we're going into this story that will stop us from getting too far down the rabbit hole or being fooled by it. And as I said, I should never have clicked on this story at all. Why should I never have clicked on the story? Because I should have taken a look and seen who the author was, not recognized them as a legitimate source, news source, and I should have just gone by it, right? That's really the first thing you have to do in starting to identify fake news, is if you see something salacious in your feed, if you see something that makes you think, wow, that's awful, or that's fantastic, or that's really interesting, they've cured it. Really, have they? First of all, you got to take a look at the source and know that in many cases, not in this particular case, but in many cases, they're going to try and make the source look like it's a legitimate name. In the 2016, all of the fake news that was swirling around the U.S. presidential elections, a lot of the fake stories came from a news site that looked like a newspaper called the Denver Guardian. Now, anybody living in Denver knows that there's no Denver Guardian, but people who don't live in Denver would think Denver Guardian sounds like a legitimate newspaper, doesn't it? And some of the most nefarious stories of that era came from that fake news site. So making sure that you know and can kind of vouch for the news site that the information is being posted from, or the source that's being posted from, is tremendously important. So you can do a couple things. If you see something that you think may be true and you're not too sure, you can look at other articles on that site, or you can do a search on the author and see what sort of content they're producing. And if they're producing a lot of what looks like legitimate content, then you're probably, okay to give them the first check. Maybe not trust them yet, but give them a check. If not, it's very easy then to, at that point, discard them. And of course, you can also ask yourself right away, if this is really true, why is it not in mainstream media? Now, you might have a mistrust of mainstream media, but trust me, if cancer's cured tomorrow, mainstream media will be talking about that. So making sure, so you have to ask yourself that legitimate question is, why is this not being shared widely elsewhere? Then you can go to the different fact-checking sites. If you are unsure and you're still not sure about the legitimacy of something, there are a variety of them. Some of them have a political bias, I will admit that, but factcheck.org, Snopes, the Washington Post fact checker, PolitiFact.com, all ones that you can start with, and there are probably others which I would look forward to you sharing below if you've got a good fact checker that you trust. Please share that with us. So do that if you're still not sure. The one thing that you don't want to do, is read something, be so outraged by how awful or how incredible the story is that you immediately share it, or you read it and you share it. Check first. Don't be part of the problem in propagating these fake stories going out. Be part of the solution. So if you see something that you definitely identify as fake, it's probably going to have been shared by somebody who's one of your friends. You might drop them a note or post it and say, "Hey, this was fake news. Pretty sure you weren't aware of that," and you can actually post that. Now, sometimes you'll end up in a bit of a flame war and an argument as a result, and at that point there might be an unfriending involved, which is sad, but probably inevitable at that point. So being part of the solution is not always going to be easy. One of the other things that makes it so difficult, besides the fact that the algorithms are going to try and feed us content that we are going to readily and quickly engage in, is a lot of the stories are a lot of the fake news stories contain a grain of truth. They might be 100% true, but completely out of date, something that happened a long time ago. Or the photo might have been changed, or the headline might have been changed with just a few words. That changes that. While the story is still accurate, the headline creates a bias. Do you know where I'm going with this? For example, maybe the salmon stocks here in British Columbia the sockeye salmon stocks are on the rise. And maybe there was a news article that said, sockeye salmon stocks on the rise. Somebody could have taken that article, reposted it, but just changed the title to say, since the Conservative government was elected, salmon stocks on the rise. When in fact, the salmon stocks might have been on the rise years before a Conservative government was elected. Now that's completely fabricated on all those parts. But you see how a bias can be inserted into what's true through a little bit of manipulation. So unfortunately for us, it means we have to become increasingly sophisticated at spotting these fake stories, understanding the dates, doing searches on the content, understanding the sources, checking the authors, and calling each other into account if we are sharing those stories. Of course, the other thing that you can do is when you do spot a story is you can let Facebook know that this is indeed fake news. This is something that they should not be sharing and give them an alert. That is really, you would have thought that probably should have been the very first thing that I told you in this entire narrative. Why am I leaving it to the very end? Because I have the least faith that Facebook is really going to make a lot of changes that are going to affect this. I simply don't have trust that the social networks have our best interest at heart the way that we have our best interest at heart. So let's take a little bit of control ourselves, see if we can't reduce, at least in our own feed, the amount of fake news, and maybe bring a few other people into a little more into the light of understanding what's fake and what's real. There's lots of great sources we will include in the description. And if you have other suggestions that I have not covered here, I look forward to you adding them into our comments. That's all the time that I have for today. I hope that you found today's video to be useful and thought-provoking. Let's please, in the conversation, let's keep this dialogue civil. We're all just trying to help. Till next time, I'm Steve Dotto. Have fun storming the castle.